Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. For Emma and Alexander, two people from different worlds, their paths crossed again after years of silence and secrets. When their daughter, Lily, innocently asked about a man in their family photos, it set in motion a journey that would unravel the past and reveal the truth. Today, we share the story of love, loss, and the courage to face what was left behind. Please subscribe to our channel to begin today's story. Lily Thompson, at the tender age of 8, had always been full of curiosity. She was the kind of child who asked 1,000 questions a day, always seeking to understand the world around her. On a crisp spring afternoon, with the sun casting its golden glow over New York City, she skipped along the cobblestone path of Riverside Park. Her small hands gripped the cone of her favorite ice cream, and she occasionally glanced over her shoulder, making sure her mother, Emma, was still seated on the nearby bench, lost in a phone call. Emma, Lily's mother, was her anchor, a steady presence in Lily's life, always watching over her, ensuring she stayed safe in the busy city. And yet, in moments like these, when the park was bustling with families, and the warm breeze carried the sound of laughter through the air, Lily felt a sense of independence. She was free to explore, to wander, and to follow her natural sense of wonder. But on that afternoon, as she roamed a little too far from her mother's side, something happened that would change her life forever. In the distance, Lily spotted him. At first, it was just a fleeting image, a man walking through the park, flanked by security guards. But as Lily looked more closely, she felt something stir inside her. It was the way the crowd parted as he moved through, the way people stepped aside almost reverentially. His presence was commanding, undeniable. He was someone important. He was dressed in a sharp, expensive suit, a stark contrast to the casual attire worn by most others in the park. His demeanor was calm, yet there was an unmistakable air of authority that surrounded him. It was Alexander Stone. Lily had seen him before. Though not in person, she had seen his face countless times on television, in newspapers, and in magazines. He was a billionaire CEO. The kind of man whose wealth and success were the stuff of headlines. But that wasn't why Lily was drawn to him. No, it wasn't his money or his status that captured her attention. It was something else entirely. Something far more personal. Lily had discovered, just a few months ago, that she had seen this man before, in the old family photo albums. Not on the glossy pages of tabloids or business magazines, but in the worn, yellowed photographs that sat on the highest shelf in their small apartment. In those pictures, Lily had seen a much younger Alexander Stone, smiling brightly, his arm casually draped around her mother's shoulders. The two of them looked so happy, so carefree, as though they had shared a life full of love and laughter. At first, Lily didn't know who he was. She had only been 8 when she found the album while searching for Christmas decorations. She had asked her mother about him, curious about the man in the pictures, the one with the charming smile and the serious eyes. But Emma had quickly shut the album, changed the subject, and that was that. Lily didn't know what to make of it. Her mother had never spoken about him, not in the years since those photos were taken. And yet, here he was, right in front of her. Lily's heart raced. She had to know the truth. She had to understand why this man, who seemed so important, was in their family's past. Why did he appear in the photos with her mother? Why wouldn't her mother talk about him? With a sense of purpose that belied her age, Lily slipped away from her mother's sight. Her ice cream forgotten as it dripped down her hand, she tossed it into a nearby trash can, the sticky sweetness fading from her fingers as she navigated through the crowd. Her eyes remained fixed on Alexander, her tiny heart pounding with equal parts excitement and nervousness. Emma's distant voice called out to her. But Lily didn't stop. She had to know. When she reached him, Alexander was stopped by a phone call. His security team standing nearby, creating a small perimeter around him. Lily hesitated for a moment, then slipped between 2 distracted guards, moving quickly towards him. At just barely 4 feet tall, she was easily overlooked, but her determination gave her courage. She approached him, tugging gently at the sleeve of his designer jacket. Alexander looked down at her, his expression momentarily one of annoyance. But it softened when he saw her face. There was something about her. Something familiar in the bright green eyes that met his. A spark of recognition he couldn't quite place. "Hi, sir," Lily said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Why do you appear in my family's photo albums?" The question hit Alexander like a physical blow. His phone slipped from his hand, clattering against the pavement as he stared at the small girl before him. His security detail tensed, but he waved them back. There was something about Lily that captivated him. Something he couldn't ignore. "What did you say?" he asked, kneeling down to her level. His voice dropped to a whisper, his eyes narrowing as he studied her face. Lily's words were simple, but they carried a weight far beyond her years. "You're in the pictures with my mom. The old ones. She gets sad when I ask about them." Lily's innocence and honesty made Alexander feel exposed, vulnerable. For a moment, the world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them standing in the middle of the bustling park. But before he could respond, Emma appeared, rushing through the crowd, her face ashen with fear. "Lily," she cried, her voice sharp with panic. Lily looked up at her mother, confused, but Emma's gaze locked with Alexander's. Recognition dawned in her eyes, and the color drained from her face. She froze. "Alex," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Alexander's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't heard that name in years. It was the name she used to call him, back when things were different. Lily looked between the two adults, sensing the sudden shift in the air, the tension that seemed to rise between them. She pulled back slightly, still clutching the question in her heart, but now more unsure than ever. "Mom, do you know him?" Lily asked, her voice small, but insistent. Emma pulled Lily protectively to her side, her grip tight, almost desperate. "We need to go, honey," she said, her voice strained. "Now." But Lily wouldn't let go of the question. "But Mom, he's in our pictures. Why won't you talk to him?" Emma hesitated, and for a moment, Alexander looked as though he might say something. But instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, offering it to Emma. "At least take this," he said, his voice softer now, tinged with the weight of years gone by. "My personal number is on the back." Emma hesitated, her hand trembling as she reached for the card. Without looking at it, she tucked it into her pocket and turned away. "Goodbye, Alex," she said, her voice breaking. As they walked away, Lily looked back over her shoulder, her heart heavy with confusion. Alexander stood motionless, watching them leave, and in that moment, something shifted inside him, something long buried that had never truly gone away. Lily didn't know it yet, but her innocent question had begun a chain of events that would uncover secrets, unravel old wounds, and ultimately change the course of her family's life forever. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline of New York, Emma tucked Lily into bed in their modest two-bedroom apartment on the city's bustling east side. The small room smelled of fresh laundry and the faint scent of lavender from the diffuser Emma had placed on the nightstand. Lily, her young mind still racing with questions, lay wide-eyed, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts tangled in confusion and wonder. "Mom," Lily asked, her voice small in the quiet of the night, "why did you run away from that man today? The one from our pictures?" Emma paused, her hand hovering over Lily's forehead as she smoothed her daughter's hair. Her face was unreadable, but there was a shadow in her eyes, one that only came when she had to confront something long buried. She took a slow breath before sitting down on the edge of the bed, her shoulders heavy with years of unspoken burdens. "It's complicated, sweetie," she said quietly. "Sometimes grown-ups have histories that are difficult to explain." Lily's eyes searched her mother's face, trying to piece together the puzzle that had been set before her. "Were you friends with him?" she asked, a flicker of innocence in her voice. Emma's hand paused as it brushed a curl from Lily's forehead. She seemed lost for a moment. Her face softened with a small, sad smile. "We were more than friends once," she said, her voice trailing off. A long time ago. We were, like boyfriend and girlfriend. Lily's eyes widened, her young mind grappling with the weight of the revelation. Like in the fairy tales? She asked. Her voice full of hope. The kind of hope only children have when they discover that love might actually be real. Not just something found in stories. Emma's lips quivered as she gave a small, bittersweet smile. Something like that, darling. But that was another life. It's not like that anymore. Is he rich? Lily asked, her curiosity growing, her eyes bright with the kind of wonder that only a child could have at the sight of a billionaire. He had people protecting him. Like in the movies. Emma let out a soft laugh. Though it didn't reach her eyes. He is now, she said, her voice distant, almost as if she were lost in a memory. When I knew him, he wasn't. He was just Alex, brilliant. Ambitious. But struggling. Just like the rest of us. Lily tilted her head, trying to reconcile the imposing figure she had seen in the park with the young man in the photos who had once looked so carefree beside her mother. Do you still like him? She asked. Her voice small but full of sincerity. Emma's hand stilled, and for a moment, she seemed frozen, her gaze softened, filled with a mix of pain and regret. Emotions that she had buried for so long. It doesn't matter anymore, sweetie, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Our worlds are too different now. We can't go back. Lily, sensing that her mother's heart was heavy, didn't press further, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than Emma was willing to share. Her mother's words lingered in the air like a soft echo, and Lily couldn't help but wonder why her mom was so sad when she spoke of Alex. Or why she had never told her about him before. That night, as Emma turned off the light and kissed Lily's forehead, the small apartment fell silent. But sleep wouldn't come easily to either of them. Lily's mind kept drifting back to the man in the park, Alexander Stone. He was someone her mother had once loved. Someone who had been in their lives long ago. But why had Emma never spoken of him? And why had she run away from him so quickly today? Meanwhile, in the stillness of the apartment, Emma sat alone in the kitchen, her heart heavy with the weight of years filled with regrets. She opened the forbidden photo album once more, tracing her fingers over the photographs of a younger version of herself. Smiling beside Alexander, she hadn't allowed herself to look at these in so long. And now, as she ran her finger across his face, the memories came flooding back. The joy, the laughter, the promises they had made to each other before everything fell apart. Tears silently streamed down her face as she held Alexander's business card in her other hand. The one he had given her just hours ago. Emma had always kept it hidden, tucked away in the back of her mind, out of reach. But now, faced with the reality of her past, she wasn't so sure if she could continue to keep it there. In that moment, as Emma sat alone in the dimly lit room, she made a decision. If her daughter wouldn't hear the truth from her, perhaps it was time for her to take the first step. She had kept the secret for so long. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to finally face the consequences of the choices she had made. And what had Lily uncovered? She had found the man from the photographs. The one who had shared her mother's past. The one who had been a part of their family. Even if Emma had never admitted it aloud. Emma could no longer run from the truth. And neither could Alexander. It was time for them all to face the past and the future. For better or worse, the pieces of their lives were slowly starting to come together. The days following Lily's encounter with Alexander Stone in Riverside Park were filled with a heavy silence in their small apartment. Emma went about her daily routine. But there was a palpable tension in the air. One that was impossible to ignore. She knew that the past, the secrets she had kept for so long, were no longer hers to control. And the more she tried to ignore the truth, the more the weight of it pressed down on her chest. Meanwhile, Alexander couldn't get Lily's question out of his mind. Why was he in their family's photo albums? The little girl's innocent inquiry had shaken him to his core. The last few days had passed in a blur. His mind consumed by the encounter. And his thoughts constantly drifting back to Emma. He knew he had to find out more. In his penthouse office, late into the night, Alexander sat at his desk staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows. the city lights twinkling beneath him. His thoughts were a whirlwind, his mind moving in 1,000 directions at once. He had commissioned an investigation into Emma's life, knowing it was the only way to get the answers he desperately sought. His assistant, Elena, had already sent him the preliminary report, and he opened it now, his heart heavy with anticipation. The report was thorough but not intrusive, just a look at public records and basic information. But what it revealed made Alexander's chest tighten with a mixture of guilt and admiration. Emma had put herself through nursing school, working tirelessly to support herself and Lily. She had raised her daughter alone, working long hours at Metro General Hospital, living modestly in a working-class neighborhood. There were no romantic partners listed in her life, no one serious enough to share her address. At least not in any public record. But what struck Alexander the most was the timeline. The report detailed that Emma had disappeared from his life shortly after he began to make a name for himself in the business world. The year his first company received major funding, the year his career took off, Emma had simply vanished. No explanation, no goodbye, just an empty apartment and a returned engagement ring. He had never known why she had left him, never understood what had happened. His thoughts were interrupted by a call from his younger brother, James. Still at the office? Huh? James's voice was light, but there was concern beneath it. Where else would I be? Alexander sighed, rubbing his temples. I saw Emma 3 days ago. He added, his voice quieter than usual. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. And then James spoke, his voice cautious. Emma Evans? She has a daughter? Alexander's heart stopped for a moment. He nodded, even though his brother couldn't see him. 8 years old. Her name's Lily. The implication hit James like a slap. 8 years? Are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Alexander felt his throat tighten. He didn't know what to think. His mind was a mess of emotions, guilt, confusion, hope. The girl, Lily, she has my mother's eyes, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. James exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment settling in. Have you tried calling Emma? She's probably just avoiding you. I tried, Alexander muttered, but she practically ran from me in the park. I don't know what to do with this. James, she's been hiding something from me for years. James's voice softened. Don't do anything rash, Alex. Whatever happened between you two, that child deserves careful handling. Alexander hung up, his mind still racing. The truth, whatever it was just out of his reach. And now, he wasn't sure if he was ready to uncover it. The following morning, Emma was in the break room at the hospital, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee as she prepared for her 12-hour shift. Her mind was still clouded with thoughts of Alexander, and the phone call she had received from him just a few days ago. She couldn't escape the reality of it, and yet, despite her best efforts to block it out, she felt the weight of their shared past pressing down on her. Her friend and colleague, Dr. Mia Chen, slid into the seat across from her, noticing the fatigue on Emma's face. You look like you've seen a ghost, Mia remarked, her voice light but filled with concern. Emma forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Something like that, she murmured. Mia raised an eyebrow. Anything you want to talk about? Emma hesitated for a moment, then pulled her phone from her pocket. She showed Mia an article featuring Alexander at a charity gala, looking every bit the powerful, successful man he had become. I used to know him, Emma said quietly. Before all this, Mia's eyes widened as she saw the image. Alexander Stone? She asked, her voice filled with disbelief. How did you know him? Emma's face darkened, and she quickly tucked her phone away. We were together for 3 years. In college, she explained softly, but it ended badly. Mia's eyes narrowed, sensing the depth of Emma's pain. Badly? How badly? I left without saying goodbye, Emma whispered. I returned his engagement ring by mail. Her voice was thick with emotion, and Mia's expression shifted, her sympathy palpable. That's cold, even for you, Mia said gently. What happened, Emma? Emma sighed deeply, her gaze distant. I had my reasons. I thought it was the only way to protect him. From everything. And just like that, the walls Emma had built around her past began to crumble. And the secrets she had hidden for so long were on the verge of being exposed. As the days passed, Emma and Alexander slowly began to rebuild their relationship. Taking small steps towards healing. They met on neutral ground. Focusing on their daughter, Lily, and their shared past that had remained buried for so long. Their conversations, initially filled with tension and unresolved emotions, gradually became more open, filled with honesty and vulnerability. Lily, with her childlike wisdom, continued to bridge the gap between her parents, reminding them that love, though complicated, could still heal wounds. She shared her excitement about the possibility of a dog, about chess games, and about the simple joys of being a family again. Slowly, Emma and Alexander started to understand the importance of the little moments they had once taken for granted. One crisp autumn day, as the sun began to set, they stood hand in hand at the front of a small chapel. Lily walked down the aisle, beaming, carrying a small basket of flowers, while a cheerful golden retriever puppy trotted alongside her. Alexander and Emma exchanged glances, their hearts full, their past pain now fading into the background of a brighter future. As they exchanged vows, Lily's delighted applause echoed through the chapel, a sound of a family reunited, complete, and whole once more. They had learned the hard way that love wasn't just about grand gestures but the quiet moments. The willingness to forgive, and the courage to face the past. And as they walked out of the chapel, hand in hand, they knew that their journey had only just begun. Together, as a family, they would face whatever came next. Thank you for following this journey. Please subscribe to our channel for more life stories.